Is it good? All right. So I'll let you guys introduce yourself in about 60 seconds. We can start from Abbas and then go from there.
Great, sounds good. I mean, I've been in crypto for about 6 years, spent the last year with MetaDAO, that's the important context, and joined Umbra somewhere around the ICO time, and have been there ever since. But yeah, that's about me.
Hi, I'm Vulkan from Jurassic Finance. We do tokenizing dinosaurs. I've been in crypto maybe for about 6 years as well, but joined the MetaDAO ecosystem this year thanks to Mr. 8-Bit. Very randomly, I think he tweeted something about wanting to do a podcast on MetaDAO, and I just reached out to him, like cold DMs, like, hey, I'm gonna do this with you for free. Let's build something. Got in the ecosystem like that, and then after 2-3 months, realized how easy you can build in this ecosystem. I was like, okay, let's do something really different and go around to doing dinosaurs. But yeah, I have my own talk later, so I'll talk more about dinosaurs then.
My name is Ranga. I'm the co-founder of Solomon Labs. I have a presentation later today, so I'll be covering more in detail about my background and what we're building at Solomon. But at a very high level, what we're doing is we're building the infrastructure layer for productive dollars. The idea is that you should be able to earn on your stables without all of the unnecessary intermediaries, any lockups, staking, vaults, just a clean UX experience, the ones you experience with holding USDC or USDT, but you get the base rate.
You have an exciting announcement later, right? Nice.
I hope it's exciting.
I'm excited. I'm Hunter with Laso Finance, where you can get the crypto prepaid card with no ID upload required. It works for humans, and also it is the only way your agent can go and get its own card to go spend online without a human in the loop.
All right. So let's get started with the questions. I think looking from the outside in, somebody who's not very familiar with the MetaDAO ecosystem, especially as founders, you have a lot of questions about, should I raise here? Why should I raise here? Is it any better than, venture capital, the traditional ways of funding companies? And Ranga, I want to ask you first. So, building a stable coin is already like a huge undertaking. And it's a very hard market out there. What made you choose to raise on MetaDAO and introduce that complexity? Do you think that it had any other upside as opposed to traditional ways of raising money?
Yeah. So you're building a stablecoin product, or more specifically, stablecoin infrastructure is a pretty big undertaking and requires a lot of capital. From my perspective, when I first spoke to Prophet, this was over 6 months ago now. That initial conversation was enlightening in the sense that he sort of talked about all the pain points that I had observed in the space leading up to what MetaDAO is. A lot of rugs, a lot of grifts, a lot of misalignment around where value should accrue. So from that perspective, there was already a lot of alignment about what we should do. But I think more importantly, what I'd observed in the space was this idea that attention is probably the hardest thing that you can get as a founder. And your job as a founder is to create as many moments of attention as possible. But so really good founders are able to do that frequently. But the next step after the attention, after you get that attention is, it's ephemeral nature, right? Like it's always fleeting. How do you properly capture that attention and convert it into something real? And that's where the ownership concept really made a lot of sense. You think about the call to action when usually a company announces a raise, right? They get a ton of attention. It's all the PRs everywhere. They have a ton of eyes on themselves. People read that announcement and they say, okay, cool, what's next? Some people do points, referrals, different ways to try to hold on to that adventure or convert that attention. But to me, the idea of ownership coins is the best call to action after attention. And MetaDAO solves the problem of creating a system where you can actually trust that ownership. that ownership is something real. And that's the job of MetaDAO, is convincing those that are holding these ownership coins that the value will accrue to these tokens, and these companies are aligned with those tokens.
And what about you, Hunter? I know you've been offered venture capital before and opportunity to raise through the traditional ways. What made you turn that down? I mean, you just raised recently, so congratulations, by the way. But
Thank you.
yeah, so what was it for you that made you want to choose MetaDAO?
It was actually really straightforward. So for context, my previous startup was venture backed and sold that in 2024. So that was just another route that Lasso could have gone. But Lasso was cash flowing from like the very beginning. So it didn't necessarily need that VC funding. It compresses you into this kind of bimodal outcome, right? Which didn't quite make sense. Over the years of building Lasso, and especially last year, there's so many different teams approaching Lasso to do an ICO, but the meta, for lack of a better term, were like these pumped up fund launches where you have to do all this complicated market making to stabilize the chart. And even if you do achieve that, you're left with this token that's totally divorced from the equity of the business, and just didn't feel good. I can't really verbalize it in a better way. It just didn't feel like I was putting out a product to my users that was actually good for them. And so I came up here to Coliseum in April for Frontier and talked to the Coliseum guys. I was like, no, not raising. And they introduced me to Profit and Mista. I read the docs in like, and just in that one shot of reading through the docs in half an hour or whatever, it just immediately clicked. Like this is that perfect balance of your holders have a claim on the direction of what is built, but it doesn't devolve into a bureaucracy like some DAOs have in the past. It just was like immediate click. And then as Profit mentioned, for consumer businesses like Lasso, having the token as a marketing wedge is extremely valuable. So it just was a no-brainer.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. I'm also wondering about Umbra, Abbas. You guys were pretty early through the ICO. Like I think you guys were like the third or fourth, something like that, which means, I mean, a lot of things have changed since then. How was the experience raising on MetaDAO? And what made you choose that path, especially when it was not as proven as it is today?
My story is a bit different because I was on the other side of the business pitching founders to join MetaDAO. So Avicii is when I made my first intro to Profit. Crew was my second intro. I think Paystream was my third, so something to that effect. And every time I made those intros, I had to find a way to convince those founders first. So I'm pretty convinced myself. I did all of the back end diligence of, hey, if something goes wrong, what's the edge case? And that meant I was fairly confident on joining a business that's going to raise on MetaDAO. So when Crew and Profit spoke and they decided to do that raise, I was mostly an advisor for Crew because I was around for about, I'd say, early when Crew started building it with the team. I was around for about 6 months before they actually went into the raise. So it was very clear that it was the right choice to make. And once they did make it happen, I decided to go full time, help out Umbra, grow from there. But I think broadly, for me personally, I spent like 5 years investing and trading. And for the longest time, my biggest problem was the token market and how horrible that market was for me as an investor and trader. So when I saw Profit's article for the first time about building a launchpad, I texted him saying, hey, I would love to help because I spent 4 years working with founders as well in Super Team and other spots. So it feels like the right convergence to participate in. So I got to solve two problems at the same time, help founders as well as work on the investor side of it. And Crew also aligned in that direction. So broadly, it made sense to have an opportunity to raise or start a company that has retail participants, owners, and holders that evangelize for your brand and like work with us. And that's worked out pretty well so far.
And now, Vulkan, you are the only permissionless launch on this panel at the moment. And there haven't really been many permissionless launches on MetaDAO. So I'm wondering what you guys thought, or what was the idea behind raising on Futardio. I think a lot of teams, at least who I've talked to, they're sometimes afraid of launching on Futardio because of the permissionless nature. of it all. And there's a lot of failed raises out there. So did that not scare you, or by the time you chose, you were already fully fatarded?
Yeah. I mean, about the last thing you said, a lot of failed raises. Yeah, the thing I really find interesting about Fotardio is I think there's about 50 raises, 45 failed, and 5 that succeeded really got oversubscribed. So you're either gonna win big or you're gonna lose, essentially. We also had some really interesting. I mean, I've been in the ecosystem like 6 months maybe, and already so much happened. There were so many fantastic launches that just couldn't raise as well. So it's a mixed bag. But why did we choose MetaDAO? I mean, we were working together on ownership media, so it was already kind of obvious. My co-founder Sora, who couldn't make it here today, he was a bit skeptical. So we went and talked with everyone, like Star, Crafts, any launchpad really. And nothing was really as good as MetaDAO. The reason why I'm saying that is at that time, before we were thinking about doing Jurassic, peer-to-peer had just launched, and we just did a podcast on ownership. And I think the founder of peer-to-peer said the reason they chose MetaDAO was because of the regulatory framework, and the legal side really made it easy for their international business to run, which was interesting to me. Because after that, I went to research and I realized there's like so many different reasons why one would want to raise on Fotardio. So we kind of looked at, okay, we got this project, we got this idea. It was not a project, it was just an idea. Tokenizing dinosaurs, quite like a simple, really easy to explain. And it's also easy to like get noise around it. So what we did is we were like, okay, let's look at all the platforms. We saw Fotardio, we saw the hype that was going with MetaDAO, Solana-native tokenization. At the end of the day, I don't think that the platform really matters that much as itself, meaning that the project is much more important than the platform that you're raising on. But what MetaDAO and Fotardio specifically gave us is we didn't need to, like, people were able to trust us as like two guys with just an idea, with no really background in dinosaurs and no really founders in crypto. It allowed us to try our idea. We raised some money for it, and now we did some good progress. We're going to show how really we can do, but it just allowed us to let people bet on us with, just trusting us that we're not going to rug, but there's really no trust because we can't rug. So that was the main reasons why.
Yeah, I think the fact that two Balkan guys who are just locked in Belgrade, they could raise, I think it was like $50 million committed. I think that goes to show how important this mechanism is, and how good it is, even though it's not perfect, but I feel like it's definitely early signs of product market fit. And talking about skepticism, which you mentioned, I'm wondering what were your biggest concern when raising a MetaDAO? And I want to hear an answer from every one of you, so we could start with Hunter.
Biggest concern before starting the raise was like, can we even hit this minimum raise goal? And I think what the MetaDAO team, Mr. Profit, Connor at Novora did a really wonderful job at is like doing all of that work ahead of time, so that at the day of the race you can be extremely confident about the success of it. Like, I had no concerns because we did so much work beforehand. So nailing that down early was important. The next piece was about your transition to essentially what is like a public company CEO, because you're managing the expectations, the transparency, and the vicissitudes of emotions of the holders, and being able to explain proposals in a clear way. That is kind of, the ICO ended on this past Friday, so we haven't had our first proposal yet. That's like a fear upcoming, but given how well the ICO has gone, I'm pretty confident about executing on that.
Thank you.
Prior to the raise itself, I don't think there was any real sense of fear outside of that this was still experimental to some degree. So there was going to be a lot of unknowns, and how those unknowns might actually impact our ability to execute. So we've had to navigate some of that as MetaDAO matures. But yeah, prior to the raise itself, I wouldn't say there was one clear fear. I think, we felt pretty comfortable given that we knew that there was enough demand from venture itself that we could have raised a couple of million. So the opportunity to combine the fact that we could raise that amount on MetaDAO and then gain that additional attention and alignment from token holders and then be able to transition that into hopefully usage of the product was a pretty compelling case. During the raise itself, my fear was getting accused of being derivative ape and having a poly market as a secondary market betting against my failure. That's a joke. That did happen in reality, but no, it was a pretty incredible experience, and there's a lot of learnings from what we've experienced in the last few months.
Thank you.
For us, I would say it was definitely understanding how decision markets and governance works. I think for everyone, like learning about Futurkey the first time, it's really confusing. Maybe just me, but the people that we were really close with, so me, Sora, and also Super Team Vulkan, which helped us a lot. Understanding Futurkey and decision markets was like something that took us a little bit of time. But after, I mean, I understood it. For Sora, I needed to explain to him again, explain to him a bit. He also researched himself. He didn't like that you could, you raise this money, but then you don't have control over it. It needs to do a decision market every time. And then he was like, oh, what if we need to do like this thing that's like very cheap, but also does not fit in our budget? So like what, you need to do like a decision market for like 3K. So I guess the main thing was that understanding and explaining, and obviously, like if it's difficult for a founder to understand, maybe we're just retarded. But if it's difficult for a founder to understand, you can also understand how it would be difficult for people to trade and participate in them as well. So I would say that's probably like for us that was the biggest hurdle, and as I understand, that's also like still a big hurdle to really making MetaDAO massive. So I would say yeah, just understanding the governance.
Thank you.
I mean, for me, most of it felt like a challenge more than anything. Like anything that I saw that was an obvious problem, I was pretty excited by most of it. I'm sure crew wasn't, or like some of the team members weren't about having a token assigned to them, but I was looking forward to it. We did have a lot to deal with early, right after the raise, I suppose, because the token pumped massively because of Zcash and a bunch of other privacy hype, and then like it crashed 75-80%. That wasn't pleasant because the holders do not treat you kindly at all, and you get all sorts of shit in your DMs. But I think we've sort of accepted it as part of the bargain. We get a pretty sweet deal. We get to have, like Hunter rightly said, sort of a public company that we get to participate and engage with, all sorts of stakeholders, not just people that have bought our tokens, but our advisors, partners, investors. And that's really cool because you get to do a lot of stuff that requires leverage that you otherwise probably would not have. And this gets you that. So that plus maybe some friction along the way, such as liquidations or possible proposals that could be rogue proposals and so on. But all of it, I felt like MetaDAO as a team or even us, it's something that's solvable. Like you could work towards finding a solution because there's plenty of great partners involved in the mechanism right now. So yeah, it's been exciting.
Do you not find the idea of getting liquidated a little scary? I feel like when a founder thinks about, launching a MetaDAO, that's one of the first things that they'll think about is, okay, am I going to get liquidated? And what are the chances that I'm going to get liquidated? And also, like, I'm basically attaching my worth to it, the price of the token. So do you not ever fear that, or was that not something that cross your mind?
I mean, I'd be crazy if I said that liquidation is not scary. It is. You end up returning a wide chunk of your company and it's like starting over from fresh. So of course it's scary, but I think the good thing is the only time that has been a liquidation, it has been for something extremely serious. And most of, let's say, returning back to NAV, etc., has just been a buyback. That seems pretty reasonable if the markets decide that's something to do. So far it hasn't seemed like a scary situation, and hopefully, like I said, seems solvable. I feel like we have good partners, we have a good opportunity. Given a team has sufficient time, at least in the beginning, to ramp up growth or have some delivery of PMF or whatever, they can at least have a good enough chance.
Yeah, I would say not at all, really, because if you get liquidated, you're probably at fault. I mean, if we believe that decision markets are like a really good way to do governance, and they're not like you can't manipulate them, then there's no reason really to be scary about it. Another reason is like, one of my principles is like, to be a Fortario founder, you like always want to raise as little as possible, so then you have as little liability kind of to get liquidated, because it's not like we raised like 10 million and then we're not shipping enough to like justify not even liquidation, but even being downscaled, kind of what we saw with Paystream. So always keep in mind, like, if you raise a small amount and you have like a very, very, very small monthly allowance, I don't think there's any reason to be scared. And also, like, if you do end up being liquidated, you probably made a lot of mistakes to get to that point. Also, similar for like the Paystream situation, is like, you don't just wake up one day and just get your salary cut 50% or whatever happened in the proposal and the deal that they ended up making. So you kind of need to make a lot of mistakes to get to the point where you either get liquidated or something happens to you. But I think the signs of something like that can be found like a lot earlier.
And before we get to you, Ranga, I also want to put this out there. You had one of the most, I guess, controversial proposals, because it had, I think, 5 million volume, which set a historical record for MetaDAO decision markets. So I'm wondering, how did that feel? And did that feel like it was too much friction, or did anything good come out of that?
I don't think I'll have to do my presentation later, because half of what we're talking about right now is being covered. Yeah, in particular, I guess I won't need to present really. Yeah, I had a lot of thoughts around this. I think we are an example of a raise that really showed the flexible nature of what MetaDAO can be. So there's a lot of conversations around the types of projects that should launch on MetaDAO, and there's the idea that, hey, you should have a launch product that's looking to accelerate in terms of usage. You already have PMF and you're trying to grow users. There was that initial plan for us. There were some pivots that occurred, and then the most controversial aspect of the reason, or one of the reasons we raised a lot of capital, was to deploy liquidity for USDv, USDC. And that required the capital to move from the futarchy governed DAO into a multi-sig that could market make. And there was a lot of concerns about whether that should happen or should not. And our job was to build trust with the community, build trust with our backers. And there were some that had concerns around, would this be opening up a door for potential rugging? Well, can someone now take the funds and run away with it? The primary person that was fighting this proposal ended up engaging with us, and then we had a pretty lengthy conversation. And by the end of it, they were actually trading for the proposal. We also had a ton of input and help from Thea and Coliseum around the trading of that proposal. So it was an opportunity to engage with them again and convince them, or get them bullish on Solomon and what we're doing. So each of these proposals are an opportunity to sort of reassess, realign, and re-engage in a way that actually can be quite bullish.
Thank you. Hunter, yeah. Yeah, so what I wanted to ask you is, did the idea of having to put up proposals scare you at all? Or was it something you found alien or strange? Like, I just raised this amount of money and now I have to ask decision markets, to increase my monthly budget that I raised. It seems perhaps a little strange, but I'm wondering what your first reaction to that was. And also, you could also talk about what your thoughts are about liquidations.
Yeah, I'll start with liquidation. So if Laso's liquidated, it is my fault. And there's no way around that. Like, the whole purpose that we're implementing what Robin pioneered is, we want to have the ability to outsource some of the thinking to the market. It's this decentralized sort of AI in a way. And like, what a gift it is that now you have this check on you to kind of prevent you or your team's own self-delusion. Because like if one of the most consistent kind of human characteristics you can see over history is like if somebody is paid to believe something like that this product's the right direction or this company's the right direction, then they will believe it. Like it shows up throughout history. It's very, very consistent. And so having these checks and balances of markets is like a true gift. And you can get liquidated on MetaDAO. You can get liquidated in every other form of kind of employment that you can do. The scariest being as a job, you can get liquidated with no notice, right, on one day. If you are bootstrapped, you can lose a vendor. You have no backup. If you are VC backed, you're going to have a lot of pressure to increase spend to match some kind of round, and you may not be able to raise a new round. You're liquidated in that case too. So the risk is the same kind of across the board. But the benefit is with MetaDAO, you get this decentralized AI of the market to help you with product decisions. That also applies in the proposal level.
Thank you. And one last question for everybody. We'll start from Abbas. What is the best part of MetaDAO?
Oof, it's a tough one. You can see I'm a fanboy. I like everything about MetaDAO. But I'd say the fact that a good example for me is I consume plenty of public market CEO companies' content. So I watch a lot of what they do, what they speak of, and how they've run these companies over decades, especially the ones that have performed really well. And the fact that I get to mimic a version of that on a permissionless system, on programmable money, is insanely fascinating to me. So personally, that's my biggest that's my favorite part of the system. So I get to get constant feedback and validation from the markets and from everybody involved. And yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, I would say definitely it's how fast you're able to move. So really, I'm gonna go really quickly, but we got the idea on like a random Monday, made the announcement on like a Thursday that we're launching this project. Everything happened so fast that 2 weeks after we did our raise, and we got 1 week after that, we got the 15 million in commitments. So in 1 month, we went from nothing, not an idea, nothing existing, to having 15 million in commitments and having a real project in 1 month. And that's, of course, like, that's only possible thanks to Solana, obviously, and MetaDAO. So it's really just the speed from which we can get from nothing, literally nothing, to being like a funded company that's running. And the reason why I think long-term this is so good, because so many people just fucking hate their job, and they're gonna keep on hating their job more and more. And everyone has some idea in the back of the mind that they want to do, and like in 2 weeks or like a month, you can try and raise and see if you can do something, raise 50K, and then you can just quit your job and focus on what you wanna do. So you can just build so fast, and you can live a life that you want to live thanks to MetaDAO.
Legend. For me, the answer is actually the same for the best and the worst part, and that's the token holders. So it's actually really awesome to have a group of backers that actually care about what you're doing. A lot of pre-raise or even VC rounds, you have a few believers, but you're putting out posts, you're yelling into the void. No one really cares what you're doing. So having a core set of co-owners that believe in you, especially those that are aligned, is an incredible feeling. And it gives you motivation. On the flip side, there's also those that are misaligned and can be adversarial, and they can be some of the worst people. But I think the pros outweigh the cons there.
For me, it's having a wider group of people that really, really care about how the product evolves, because it's like Lasso doesn't have a PM. That's kind of my job. And if I get to outsource it to people who, want to tell me this flow is broken, that's really valuable. Because most of the time you see all these bugs, you're not going to deal with like reporting it. But if you're an owner and you're like, I've got $5,000 of this, fix this shit, that's really valuable to me. I don't have to go and find it. And so people are much more incentivized to help you improve the product and the business kind of for free in a way.
Well, I guess that's the end of our panel here. Thank you to Abbas, Vulkan, Ranga, and Hunter for joining us today for this panel. And yeah, Give it up for these founders.